So I'm Representative Dave Zimmerman, representing the 99th District, northeast part of Lancaster County. We have an area that still has quite a few farms, and we've become kind of the produce capital of Lancaster County, and as well as lots of dairy and other agriculture commodities. So looking forward to a conversation here with our Ag Secretary, Russ. So, Mr. Secretary, just good to see you, and good to be here
at the Farm Show. Happy New Year to you.
Yep, it's good to be here. Looking forward this week at Farm Show, and based on Saturday and also Sunday's crowds, I think we're in for quite a week, and sounds like the weather's going to be, pretty accommodating too, maybe. So.
Yeah.
So that'll be
maybe
good.
too accommodating.
Maybe, maybe. That's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing. We were trying to search back through the number of years that we haven't had snow. There's been more than I thought, but I don't think there's any reason to stay away, right? Statewide, which is really nice, and we saw this amazing sort of surge of attendance on Saturday and Sunday. I think it's part where Farm Show falls in the year, but also just time to get out and start a new year. Yeah.
Well, kind of to start out, and just my first question is, I think we've done something that's kind of historic here in Pennsylvania in recent months, and that's begin to implement this farm bill that the House and Senate passed and the governor signed into law. So my question revolves around, where are we in kind of implementation of all of that? Are we getting most of that in place, or do we have a ways to go yet? Or
yeah, so I'm pleased to report most of it's in motion, right?
Okay.
And they're opened up applications. We just announced this week the Ag Business Development grant program, which is one of the areas of particular interest to you, and you in your opening talked about the number of farms you have and the transitions that are occurring. We think that whole business planning piece is a really key part. So there'll be $1 million of grant dollars available to help folks do business plans and get their whole planning component, where if they want to look at adding vegetables or they're in dairy and they want to transition, whatever, that's a key piece. We've got there were 16 different bills in that package, which is amazing, right? And you should take credit, for particularly the conservation piece as a prime sponsor and helped us there, right? Which is another issue within Lancaster County particularly.
Yeah.
But overall, just know that the majority of the farm bill is the grant is open, it's out there, it's being implemented. So we're working hard to get that done. Yeah.
Good. That's good news, and I think it was a really good bipartisan effort to get that all going. So, and you're right, conservation is huge in Lancaster County, and especially my district. So,
well, you're right there in the epicenter.
Part of that. Yeah,
and I think that's we struggle with that every day. You and I have a lot of conversations about conservation, and as we should, because it's part and parcel to what happens to agriculture in your district in Pennsylvania. I'm pleased the Farm Bill, takes a new approach in that trying to focus where the nutrients are, and just given the density of agriculture in your district in Lancaster County, there are more farms in Lancaster County than the entire state of Delaware, right?
That's right.
That just puts it in perspective for me when the Delaware's contributor into that watershed that we're challenged by. But we're making progress, and I like the model. I like the conservation district engagement, and working with our Plainsec community as well.
Yeah, and we're blessed in Lancaster County to have a really good, strong conservation district too. A lot of good individuals involved in that, with Chris Thompson kind of heading up that whole effort. So it's good stuff. So, well, a second question revolves around kind of Saturday's conversations with G.T. Thompson, U.S. Congressman, and the panel, including one of our senators, and revolves around this whole labeling issue. There's been a lot of conversation about soy milk and almond milk and actually calling that milk and so forth, and it does sound like they have something in the House, maybe in the next 6 months or so, that may address that a bit more than what we had in the past. And so I think the idea that we distinguish between some of that is kind of important to agriculture in reality, soy and almond is also agriculture. So
Yeah,
how do
right.
we make sure we distinguish between them and be fair to all entities there. At the same time, support dairy, which is huge in our district and our state.
Right. Well, as we talked about on Saturday, there's some very deeply held views, right?
Right.
And sensitivity, because what the alternatives have done is to use a word that is generally accepted in society and in the marketplace. Milk has meant milk from a mammal, right? From cows.
Right.
It is protected by the Food and Drug Administration today. And the frustration has been that the FDA hasn't moved quick enough to ensure that the term is protected. We're not saying that the alternative shouldn't be there. It's just making sure they're labeled appropriately. So the labeling law that Congressman Thompson and our PA delegation's been working on is really critical. Is in the marketplace clearly label what the product is, because it leads to then what do you do with the alternatives when you get into plant-based meats, right? It just continues, and so that labeling piece is critical.
One of my next questions.
Yeah, but I think they're sort of tied together. Not that the labeling initiative started out of the milk and the alternatives to milk, right? But now you see it showing up in contemporary discussions around alternative meat products. So that labeling is critical.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because we are, heading into this whole area of lab-grown proteins, meat, for example, and what does that look like going forward? And I think just being honest and transparent with not only our agriculture folks but also consumers.
Right.
So I think we want to make sure the labeling is done correctly. So that becomes hugely important.
And I think we owe that to them, right? I mean, I think listen, agriculture will always accommodate what the consumer interest is. And we're very proud of that, but I think we're at a moment where folks who are telling an alternative narrative about what the agricultural impact is. That's the value of a farm show, to start revealing, right? Talking about jobs, you talk about land, the significant investment, and Lancaster County leads the nation in farmland preservation. We do those things to make sure that you've got a supply chain, to have production, to have raw product that we enjoy on our plates here. That's part of our story here at the farm show.
Exactly. Yeah, so I think just simply, something like, plant-based burgers and are something that's kind of out there right now. But the lab-grown meats and so forth, I think it's really a matter of making sure we're transparent about it and people know exactly what it is that they're buying, and so I think we owe it to our farmers, really. Well, moving on then, is the whole area of hemp has kind of become a big thing this past year, and Pennsylvania's in the midst of all of that, and it's kind of was a big issue. We raised quite a few acres this past year, and we have dryers a couple of different places in the state and one in my district, and so I have one question is revolving around that whole dryer area. I'm understanding that maybe DEP is trying to regulate those things and speak into them, and I'd just like to have your perspective from agriculture on where they might fit or don't, and what we should be doing as agriculture and kind of supporting this industry and doing our part in that whole area, and even in the whole area of testing and making sure that the THC levels are where they need to be and so forth.
Well, I mean, thanks for your support on the hemp. I mean, I think I'm proud of it. I mean, I think we were out of that business, we being Pennsylvania, out of the business for 77 years, right?
Okay.
So I say to everybody, it went away, and so our work the last couple of years between the legislature and the administration is trying to rebuild that, right? And you've got a society that is anxious for it, interested in it. There are a lot of issues inside of it now that we have discovered. One that you referenced is around sort of the emissions from these drying facilities. And one thing that we haven't done previously is to permit any of the processors of those facilities. We've only done the grower piece for 2020. The guidelines, by the way, were just announced. we're going to require processors to be permitted. That was one of the issues, so we know who is actually processing and where are they doing that.
And I had I had a good conversation with one of your deputy secretaries, Fred Strathmeyer, was down in my office, and we spoke about that and the guidelines. Excellent. And so filled me in on that. So I really appreciated that, and it sounds like the right move.
I think we're going to make the right move. We've had a lot of folks, to be honest. I mean, the grower community, as growers do, they adhere to the guidelines, right? You've got all of these other people that we have no relationship with who are now showing up in a conversation and want to be processors, right? We have no relationship, so how do you establish that? How do you make sure that we've got some transparency around it? So that's a change you'll see from 2020. But I'll just tell you that here at the farm show, we've got a hemp house, miniature hemp house to show the materials. We've got building materials. We have food products, cat litter. It goes on and on and on, right? All of those things are this whole world around hemp. But it's been good for Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Well, and it looks like there could be a lot of other markets. We just need to develop some of those, and so it takes Department of Agriculture and legislature and all of us to kind of work together to help encourage it. So good.
So we'll keep working at it. I think one of the areas as we look at the 2020 year, not just our own permitting, but particularly around what the Food and Drug Administration has got to come out with some guidance on the food side. If there is a worry spot for me, it's on what's showing up in the marketplace. It's like our labeling conversation, and people making claims that the FDA have not approved. They've taken some legal actions, but I think for us to have some definition about where you can use it in food and how do we use it. We've got the hemp tea in the food court from Kreider's. Now, interesting, that's hemp oil, so that's completely legal, good to go. But there's so many questions when you stand there because people are confusing CBDs with hemp oil as one example. But anyhow, I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Still a lot to learn, I think, and a lot of opportunities there for sure. So but I appreciate the Ag Department's efforts in all of that. So it's great.
Glad to do it.
Good. So one kind of final question that I have is, we had a little bit of a scare with a test of a swine in my district, and not sure. And I guess my question really revolves around the whole diagnostics area, and in light of that, and unfortunately, it's not as serious as maybe some thought it could be, and so. I just asked the question if we're feeling real comfortable that we're prepared for the worst, if it's avian flu or swine flu or any other, major virus or whatever that might be. And from where do some of those resources then come from? Just.
Well, I feel very comfortable with where we are. I mean, I think just to reassure, you and the members of the legislature, but also the constituents, you've got a heavy animal agriculture sector there. We should be proud of what we have. I think one of the key points, both Farm Bill related, but also just of world animal health events of the last year remind us we've got a wonderful animal health diagnostic commission and a structure with University of Pennsylvania, Penn State, and the Vet Lab. The additional resources you were very helpful to secure for both the commission and through the Farm Bill. I think we're in a good place. One thing though we've got to keep working on is the biosecurity, right? I think just say that for farmers, and we've had those experiences, and just asking every farm to be mindful of their own sort of biosecurity plan. The same with our markets is key. Research is critical to that. We have, I think from a staff standpoint, from our veterinarians and diagnostic capacity, we're in a good place. But you can't take your eye off of it either, right? I think that's the other sort of lesson here, is that whether it's the strep zoo, which is today, or the African swine fever, or avian influenza, we don't want it here, right? So making sure the biosecurity is in place, the right people, and the support is there. So I've appreciated your support personally of making sure that we're protected and asking these questions and holding us to hey, you're thinking critically about that. We've got a great team of veterinarians and an ag industry from Farm Bureau to Penn Ag that's helping us out.
Yeah. When I had spent some time with the Animal Health and Diagnostics Board back in my agriculture days, and it's a great group, and and certainly have a lot of confidence in them as well. So.
Right.
All right. Well, appreciate all you're doing. Looking forward to a great farm show.
Yeah.
So.
Happy New Year to you. Happy farm show.
Thank you.
Thanks for supporting agriculture and helping us farm build this past year, but also looking forward to a good year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.